Keith, tell me about Frost Road. How did you come up with the concept? How did you partner with Christopher Schei? How did this whole concept come to life?
Frost Road got started years ago when I was coming off of Ascend and Infex and Dead Speed, some of my first graphic novels, and I was being approached by a lot of people to get into film. I was directing Call of Duty and directing a lot of the actors and a lot of the performance capture for a lot of these games, and people were like, hey, when are you moving into motion pictures? And I was like, how do I make that move from video games into film? And so I started working on early script adaptations for my books, and the thing about Ascend is like it's $150 million giant, Avengers type movie. It's like the Matrix,
Angels and Demons.
Angels and Demons. It's like, how are you gonna do that? So I started writing these screenplays for something that I could direct, that someone would allow a first-time director, even if I'm working on the performances of a $150 million video game, that doesn't mean anything in Hollywood. It doesn't mean you can direct a $150 million film. So I started doing these smaller features, and they were great, and people were really excited, but I still would have to sell them off and not be attached to them. I would have to be just the writer, and then someone else would direct. And it wasn't about the ego of directing, it was more just the experience of transitioning as a storyteller to being a director. And so I came up with this idea for Frost Road. I was working with my friend Brandon Humphreys, and we had been working on several stories, Infex, and another one called Nova Scotia, and Frost. And Frost Road was actually a street that Brandon had lived on and had this really cool idea. And we were talking about this idea about a signal, and I came from an audio background, and one of my teachers was telling me about how sound could be used as a weapon. And I was fascinated by that idea that sound could actually be used for harm as opposed to entertainment or something else like that. So we started batting around this idea, and then I just kind of ran with this script idea and took sort of how sound was being used as a weapon in military purposes, or even things that was harming whales and dolphins and other things inadvertently in the oceans, and took that kind of to a human level. And so that was the basis of what Frost Road became. And it was this idea, this really scary, almost like a zombie movie in reverse, where the characters were basically ticking time bombs, and the main character had to take them out, as opposed to being constantly defensive and survival horror in that respect. He is trying to protect the same people who are trying to kill themselves and him. And so that was sort of the core of what the screenplay was. And I've been working with a guy named Trevor Goring, who had worked on X-Men and a lot of amazing motion pictures as a storyboard artist. And he was helping me visualize what the film would look like. And that way I can go into a film pitch and say, hey, here's the idea of a screenplay. Here's how it would be boarded out. And this is how we would shoot the film. This would be our shot list. And at the same time, Christopher and I had been painting all this stuff, and Christopher was doing all this amazing stuff on Ascend and Dead Speed and some of the other stories we were conceptualizing. So I was feeding some of Trevor's boards to Christopher, and Christopher was painting them up. And we did this opening animatic for the book, which was just spectacular. It just looked gorgeous. No dialogue. It was just the opening scene. This guy, he's waking up behind the wheel of this car, and he's in the middle of the forest, and there's no other car around, but he's just tanked this thing into a tree, and he's got amnesia, and he doesn't know who he is, and he's disoriented, and there's a phone on the seat, and he's trying to call for help. He's injured, and there's this weird signal that's blocking the phone, and immediately you just set the tone for where the book is going to go. And as we were painting this, I was bringing some of my team on board to do some animation, and we were just animating the frames, and we started adding some sound in, and then we started adding some music, and instantly it started coming to life. Right. And my friend Yuri Lowenthal, I've been working with Yuri on Prince of Persia and a whole bunch of other video games, and Yuri's got just a really striking look. He's just a phenomenal actor and just great to work with. So I said, hey, Yuri, would you pose for these pages? And he was doing stuff for Dead Speed, and we ended up doing some of the same stuff for Frost Road. So Yuri had this really striking kind of look, and I had some other friends. I had Chris Alex and Edo Ross, and some other friends that were coming in. So that way we would have some consistent photo reference. So as Christopher was painting everything, it would be like, that's what Chris is going to look like, and this is what Hannah's going to look like, and this is what Preston's going to look like. And the story just took shape, and it was just a natural sort of development. But as Hollywood goes, here we had these great boards. I started developing this graphic novel, had the script, and got a film offer, and actually had a few film offers, and went down that road and started financing and got the film optioned and went into casting, and film actually got announced, I think back in like almost 10 years ago when we first started to work on it. And it was moving around great, just fantastic, and had celebrities attached to it and started to go. And tragically, in the middle of all this, we had a fire. And it wasn't like one of the wildfires that devastated LA. This was an electrical fire that was caused by a fan that was inside one of our recording studios, inside our music vault. And that just reset the entire course of everything that's going on.